What are some of the types of animal cruelty that are most common across the U.S.?
So unfortunately, there really isn't any national database that collects the types of animal cruelty or even the frequency that animal cruelty cases are being seen across the United States. But what we do know, especially from the ASPCA's work in New York City, for the last 10 years, we've been partnering with the New York City Police Department, and we've had the ability to look at that data. And what we've seen from that, as well as our work across the country, is that animal cruelty can include overt abuse, someone, being physically abusive to an animal, but a lot of it is also neglect-based crimes. That would include the failure to provide sufficient food and water, appropriate shelter, and necessary veterinary care. But animal cruelty can also mean neglect from hoarding situations, which would be large-scale neglect. Commercial breeding, where the conditions are substandard, often commonly referred to as puppy mills. There's different areas in the country, and unfortunately Iowa happens to be one of them, where there happen to be commercial breeders. And when those commercial breeders, aren't paying attention to the conditions and they're prioritizing profit over the conditions of the animals, we see that those animals suffer. And then there's also dogfighting, which is another form of really horrific animal abuse. With dogfighting, it's really difficult because a lot of it is covert. People think there's no dogfighting in my neighborhood, but there's a very good chance that there are dogfights occurring or people that are involved in dogfighting. And it takes a lot of resources to identify these cases, to work them up, and to prosecute them.
What would you say that the average person should be looking out for instances of animal cruelty?
One is just to be aware of it. So obviously, if you see someone being physically abusive to an animal, that is something that you should report to your local law enforcement or animal control officer. But the other piece of it, as I mentioned before, is the neglect-based crimes. So if you see animals being left outside in really inclement weather, if you see them that are emaciated, they aren't being provided with food and water, especially in really hot temperatures, water. If they're being left out without inappropriate shelter, that's another thing that you should be mindful of, and you should be reporting it to your local authorities. It doesn't always necessarily mean that there's a criminal offense there, but it gives the local authorities the opportunity to respond to that location and see if something's happening.
Why is it important for us to take instances of animal cruelty seriously?
Animal cruelty is really a public safety issue, and we all have the responsibility to keep the animals in our communities safe. And the other thing that we've seen is that there's a link between animal cruelty and other offenses. Especially, there's a link to domestic violence offenses. There have been plenty of studies which have demonstrated this link, and there's a very good chance that if there's domestic violence occurring in a household that has pets, that those pets may also be the victim of cruelty. So it's important, again, for people to be aware of it, to see if they see something, to say something, and to be able to allow the authorities to intervene to provide assistance to those people and those pets.
Elizabeth Brandler, ASPCA Legal Advocacy Senior Counsel, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me.
Thank you.